Have you ever been in a relationship where everything seemed to be going well until the other person suddenly started pulling away? Maybe they stopped texting as often. They seemed less affectionate. They became uncomfortable when conversations turned serious. And you found yourself wondering, did I do something wrong? Did they lose interest? Did they stop loving me? But what if pulling away isn't always a sign of losing feelings? What if, for some people, getting closer to someone actually triggers fear? Today we're exploring the psychology behind why some people become emotionally distant when they start falling in love, how attachment patterns shape adult relationships, and why understanding this can completely change the way we view love and intimacy. Let's start with something important. Most of us assume that love should naturally bring people closer together. But psychologically, intimacy doesn't feel the same for everyone. For some people, emotional closeness brings comfort and security. For others, it can bring anxiety, discomfort, or even an urge to create distance. This idea comes from attachment theory, originally developed by psychologist John Bowlby and later expanded by researcher Mary Ainsworth. According to attachment theory, our early experiences with caregivers help shape our expectations about relationships. Without realizing it, we learn answers to questions like, can I trust other people? Is it safe to depend on someone emotionally? Will people be there when I need them? These experiences don't determine our future, but they can influence how we respond when relationships become emotionally important. Researchers generally describe 4 attachment patterns: secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful-avoidant. People with secure attachment are generally comfortable with both closeness and independence. People with anxious attachment often desire closeness, but worry about rejection or abandonment. People with avoidant attachment tend to value independence and may become uncomfortable as emotional intimacy increases. People with fearful-avoidant attachment often want connection deeply while simultaneously fearing it. It's important to remember that these aren't fixed labels or diagnoses. Attachment exists on a spectrum, and people can develop greater security over time. Now let's focus on avoidant attachment, because this is often what people mean when they say, why did they pull away when things got serious? Imagine this. You've been dating someone for several months. Things seem great. They plan dates. They communicate consistently. They seem genuinely interested. Then, as the relationship deepens, something changes. They become emotionally distant. They take longer to reply. They avoid conversations about the future. They say they need more space. Naturally, you might assume they no longer care. But sometimes, the opposite is true. Sometimes, pulling away happens precisely because the relationship has become important. The closer someone gets emotionally, the more vulnerable they become. And vulnerability means risk. The risk of rejection, the risk of disappointment, the risk of depending on someone and potentially getting hurt. For individuals with avoidant tendencies, intimacy itself can activate protective responses. They may unconsciously hold beliefs like, I can only rely on myself. Needing other people makes me vulnerable. If I get too close, I'll eventually get hurt. As a result, creating emotional distance can become a way of protecting themselves from potential pain. This doesn't necessarily mean they don't love their partner. It means that love itself may feel frightening. Psychologists refer to some of these behaviors as deactivating strategies. These are often unconscious ways of reducing feelings of closeness when intimacy becomes uncomfortable. For example, someone might suddenly focus on their partner's flaws. They may convince themselves that the relationship isn't right. They might become excessively busy with work or hobbies. They may avoid emotional conversations or discussions about commitment. Or they might withdraw after moments of increased closeness. To their partner, this can look confusing or even hurtful, but internally, these behaviors may be attempts to manage emotional discomfort. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it can help explain it. So where do these patterns come from? Research suggests that early relationship experiences can influence attachment patterns. Children whose emotional needs are consistently met often learn that others are dependable and supportive. Others may grow up in environments where emotional needs are dismissed, inconsistently met, or where independence is emphasized strongly. Over time, they may learn that relying on others doesn't feel safe. Importantly, this isn't about blaming parents. Human development is complex. Attachment patterns are influenced by many factors, including temperament, life experiences, friendships, and romantic relationships. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is this: attachment patterns are not permanent. If you recognize avoidant tendencies in yourself, it doesn't mean you're incapable of healthy relationships. Research suggests that people can become more securely attached throughout adulthood. The first step is self-awareness. Notice what happens when relationships become emotionally closer. Do you suddenly focus on reasons why the relationship won't work? Do you feel trapped when someone becomes emotionally available? Do you pull away when things become serious? Rather than judging yourself, become curious. Ask yourself, what am I afraid might happen if I let someone get closer to me? Therapy can be incredibly helpful, especially approaches that focus on attachment and emotional awareness. Healthy relationships themselves can also promote greater security over time. Experiencing consistency, trust, emotional responsiveness, and open communication can gradually reshape how we think about intimacy. If you're dating someone who tends to pull away, it's important not to automatically assume they don't care. Try approaching conversations with curiosity instead of criticism. Instead of saying, "You never care about me," try saying, "I've noticed some distance between us lately. How have you been feeling about our relationship?" At the same time, remember that understanding someone's attachment patterns doesn't mean ignoring your own emotional needs. Healthy relationships require effort from both people. You deserve emotional safety, communication, and mutual respect too. Sometimes people pull away not because they don't love you, but because loving someone deeply feels unfamiliar, overwhelming, or even terrifying. Understanding attachment patterns allows us to replace confusion with compassion. It helps us stop seeing emotional withdrawal simply as rejection and instead recognize it as a possible sign of unresolved fears around intimacy. Your attachment style is not your destiny. The ways we learn to protect ourselves can change. With self-awareness, supportive relationships, and sometimes professional help, people can develop healthier ways of connecting with others. Because love isn't just about finding the right person. It's also about learning how to let ourselves be seen, supported, and emotionally close. So here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed yourself pulling away when relationships become more serious? Or have you experienced this with someone you cared about? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you enjoy learning about the psychology of relationships and human behavior, subscribe for more evidence-based psychology videos every week. And if you'd like to better understand your own relationship patterns, download our free attachment style reflection workbook from the link in the description. Remember this: sometimes people pull away not because they don't love you, but because loving someone deeply feels terrifying. Understanding that difference can change how we understand ourselves and the people we care about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.